Hey everyone, it's me, John Lorden. Thank you for joining me here on another episode of BrainScratch. Today we're going to do an update episode, and I'm going to break one of the cases off into its own video. Basically, this episode is going to cover two cases. You'll see there's another video that's released today that is talking about a third case. I'm doing that because I'm hoping that that standalone episode might help nudge that case in a new direction, and when you check out the video, I think you'll understand why. But let's get started on the two cases we're discussing here in this episode, starting with the Heidi Allen case. And in case you're not familiar with that, I will have a link in the description box below to the original episode of BrainScratch, so you can check it out for yourself, maybe pause this episode, watch that one, and come back. Now, just a few weeks after I aired that episode in October of 2016, an article came out talking about new light shed on a mystery in 1994 Heidi Allen kidnapping. And once again, I even called out in that episode that there was this reporter at Syracuse.com named John O'Brien, and it is him that is still reporting on this case. He is doing a fabulous job of staying on top of it. But this article states, was she actively working as a confidential informant for the Oswego County Sheriff's Office before she was abducted and presumably killed? The official word from the police? No. Deputies only signed her up, but never used her, they said. A judge initially said it was undisputed. Allen was an informant. 4 months later, he reversed himself without explanation and agreed with the sheriff's office she was no informant. Now, I can't help but think that there is some form of people covering each other going on here. It is very strange for a judge to hold one position, reverse that position, and not give any reasonable explanation why they are reversing that position. It's not like there was any new evidence presented that said, hey, yeah, no, we really didn't use her. And we have several other people, at least in Heidi's personal life, that are stating to the contrary of this very vocally. At least 4 people have offered proof to the contrary. A friend of Allen's is the 5th. She joins a chorus that includes Allen's aunt, boyfriend, and a co-worker who say they have first-hand knowledge. The friend, Mary Starr Carter, told Syracuse.com in an interview last month that Allen confided in her in the summer of 1992. They were on a half-hour car ride when Allen said she'd been reporting drug activity to law enforcement, Carter said. And even if you aren't going to count these personal conversations, maybe Heidi was lying to these people for some reason, we have this other piece of extremely compelling information. Jumping over to another article at Syracuse.com, Heidi Allen was exposed as confidential drug informant on card cop lost before teen was kidnapped. I discussed this in the first episode. This was a pretty big goof, and it kind of makes you wonder if she signed up for this program but no one ever supposedly used her, why was this cop carrying around her card identifying her as this type of informant with a picture of her actually clipped to the card? Allen was working with Deputy Chris Van Patten, who'd carried a 3x5-inch index card with him that listed her as a confidential informant, and he clipped a photo of her to the card according to a report he wrote in 1994. Van Patten was off duty when he got a call from another deputy saying a store employee had found the lost confidential material and turned it over to the deputy, the report said. This pretty much directly contradicts what we saw in the first article. You have the police saying, no, we never used her. Here you have a cop that actually wrote in his report, yes, she was an informant. Yes, he was actively using her. He accidentally lost this information that included who she was, had a picture of her in the parking lot of the store that she worked at, where we know that several of these suspects that we discussed in the first episode, they were frequenting that store. So despite the fact that he recovered the card, despite the fact that an employee found the card, that doesn't mean that that card was not seen by other people that were coming and going from the store. That also doesn't mean that the employee that found the card didn't leak that information to someone else. Now, why is all of this important? A guy is sitting in jail, Gary Thibodeau, serving up to a life sentence for this crime. And one of the things that always confused me when I looked into this case was I could not identify a motive, why he had done this. The theory that was put forth by the prosecution is that him and his brother worked together, abducted her, put her in a van, took her somewhere, did something with her. We don't understand the rest of the story. And they don't have the body, so there is no real hard forensic evidence in terms of cause of death or what she might have gone through before her death. There's a lot of things that really confuse me about how that whole case was processed. And now, when you have law enforcement positioning like this, it really makes me second guess. It makes me think about the possibility that they are trying to cover their butts because they're worried that his appeal might go through, their conviction might fall through, and all of a sudden they're going to be left back not just at square one, because there are new suspects that have been identified. Those suspects have said some very interesting things, and those suspects could be tied to a motive to kill her because she was reporting on drug activity that those suspects may have been doing. There is a slight chance that the police could almost be seen as a part of the reason why she was killed. And I personally have to wonder, apparently they rolled her into this informant program when she was 15 years old. Did her parents agree to that? I mean, does she even have the right to enroll herself in that line of duty without her parents' consent? I mean, she's effectively working for them to take a lesser charge for something else that she had done. Is that really a decision that a minor should be making on their own? I don't know the details of it. Her parents may be perfectly aware of it. I don't know. But it does just raise this big question in my mind of, are these police and even this court system, are they worried that someone's going to turn around and sue them for being part of the motive for her death? For being a bit reckless with her life, for leaking the information about that's the type of work she was doing. I mean, it really seems like there could be a lawsuit firing off in their direction. Are they now preparing and trying to just cover themselves up and try to protect from that? I don't know, but it's really weird that this information is kicking around like it is and people are changing positions. It looks very, very funny to me. Now, outside of that, we have some updates that are fairly recent. This is from February 14th, 2017. Family says Gary Thibodeau's health is failing, cannot attend Heidi Allen appeal hearing. And you see a picture of him here, and he certainly does look like he's struggling with his health. I still don't think I will see the end of it, said Gary Thibodeau. Only one of Thibodeau's lungs is functioning, and now his family says his health has taken a turn for the worse. For more than 20 years, he has maintained his innocence and says he had nothing to do with Heidi Allen's disappearance from the gas station where she worked. 2 years ago, Gary Thibodeau's attorney identified new suspects and evidence she believes was withheld from his original defense attorney. Oswego County District Attorney Greg Oakes disputed claims that any evidence was withheld and said the information pointing at new suspects was not credible. The judge overseeing Gary Thibodeau's appeal in Oswego County did not find the new information compelling enough to overturn his conviction. Now, I went over a bit of that information in my previous video, so I'm not going to retread it here, but I did find some clips that I didn't cover in my previous video. Two of these suspects talking about their potential involvement. So let's take a look at those real quick. This first one is James Thumper Steen, and he puts it pretty simply.
I hauled the load, got back, and it was like 2 weeks later, a week later, Roger came up to me and said something about me hauling a stolen vehicle, a van. And I said, okay. I went and asked Rich Murtaugh if that happened. He said no, that was that. Then we discussed further that it was like 8 months after that. We were at a party and Roger showed up, he was drunk, and he had mentioned something about, do you know what was in that van? And I said, no, I have no idea what was in that van. And he went on the part about the remains of Heidi Allen.
So the rest of the story is this van was driven across the border to Canada where it was scrapped. It was literally apparently unloaded into a machine that scraps cars. So Mr. Steen here, who there's a few different accounts. There's people that say that they saw him with her. So I don't know what to believe in this, but he does seem to be pointing to at least being an unwilling or unknowing accomplice in potentially removing her body and disposing of it. Now, the man he's talking about, Roger Breckenridge, also testified. This is actually at an earlier appeal that Gary had back in 2015.
Do you have any idea where her remains are?
Nope.
And that is, if you watch this whole video clip, that's a lot of what you're going to see is just him saying nope, 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 until they ask him towards the end, if you did know where she was, would you be honest and let us know? And then he insists, yes, I would, because I have children this age and I wouldn't want to not know what happened to them. So pretty interesting stuff. These guys, there's a lot of buzz around them. There's a lot of information that is kind of centering around them. Is it enough to tip this latest appeal? I don't know, but we do have some more developments on that. February 2017, a new trial procedure began. One of the appellate division judges, John Centra of Syracuse, asked most of the questions of Thibodeau's lawyer, Lisa Peoples, and Oswego County District Attorney Greg Oakes. Quote, doesn't this court have the discretion to order a new trial if we find a grave risk that an innocent man has been convicted? A decision isn't expected for 6 to 8 weeks, although the court has issued its decision sooner in some cases. Peoples argued that new evidence that surfaced 4 years ago would have resulted in a different verdict if it had been presented to the jury. That evidence implicated 3 men. None of those 3 men, James Steen, Roger Breckenridge, and Michael Borer, was ever charged in Allen's kidnapping. All 3 have denied any wrongdoing. A witness came forward 2 years ago, William Pierce, who said he saw Steen forcing a woman into a van on the day Allen was kidnapped. So they're trying to get this new evidence to give Gary a retrial. You know, it's tough to know for sure, but just from the information that I've seen, you've got a secret phone call recorded with a girlfriend of one of these guys saying that they were bragging about having a girl locked up in their van outside. You have these guys even talking about each other, that they're talking within their own group about potentially that, hey, yeah, I left her body in that van that you drove across the border to Canada. There is a lot of compelling information going on there. Would that be enough to put a seed of reasonable doubt into the jury's mind? I can't say for certain, but I can say just looking at this as an outsider and looking through the media of it, I would certainly hope so. There is just too much around these guys. There's too much buzz coming from too many different people, people that are not connected in any way. So I don't know. And if the wrong guy is sitting in prison, I certainly hope that that is changed. However, when you consider that you have a police department potentially looking real bad if this case falls apart on them, you know, I'm kind of not surprised that this process is stretching out. I'm kind of not surprised that Gary has been stuck in there. And quite honestly, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if his request for a new trial is once again denied. But, you know, with him aging as hard as he is, with him facing these health issues, he only has a matter of time, I think, before that question might not ever be fully answered. And I do think that is a shame. And I don't consider it justice if you have the wrong guy that is facing charges and doing time for a crime that he didn't actually commit. So now, in terms of Heidi's family, at least one of her more vocal members of her family is very clear. They believe that Gary's the right person. They think that he should stay in jail. But I think public opinion, it's kind of a bit of a split board on this. So I'm really not sure how it's going to play out, but it looks like we will have some update from these judges conversing with each other within the next few weeks. So I'll be sure to keep you guys updated. Let's move on to the next case we're going to talk about today, and that is Corrie McKeague. This is a case that it seems like hasn't just grabbed the interest of all of you out there, but has really grabbed the world. There is a ton of media kicking around on this case, and for a pretty good reason. There's been a few interesting developments. A few weeks ago, the police seemed to be refocusing on the garbage dump, I don't know what else to call it, the same dump that the truck was driving to, and Corrie's cell phone pings seemed to be matching the truck's path. And if you recall the previous episode, once again, if you don't, use the description box below. I've got a link to it down there. I was really questioning that whole thing. I mean, if you have a ping that is matching a truck, they have video of that area. We know that that truck was, I think, the first vehicle to actually be in that area after Corrie walked in there. I wasn't sure why the police weren't investigating that more thoroughly. Some information came out then that they had taken a look at that truck. They kind of searched the undercarriage to make sure there was no blood or anything of that type on the vehicle anywhere. But there was a very simple story that I thought could have happened. We know that Corrie was walking around and had fallen asleep in the doorway of one business for a few hours, woke up and then walked to this area. And I thought even back then it was very feasible that he was going to try to find another place to sleep, and perhaps he slept on one of these dumpsters. Now, one of the things I'm confused about, and I still can't find very good details in terms of news coverage on this, is I thought originally that the truck that was coming was picking up recycled items. So I'm not sure why they are now looking in essentially a waste dump. Something's wrong with that story there. So either I had it incorrect before, the coverage that I was looking at was incorrect before, that it wasn't recycled items and it was actually just straight up trash. But then there's something that bothers me about the logic of that. Why is Corrie going to fall asleep on like literally a dirty trash can? It just doesn't make sense. And I think there's even more of an assumption that he was actually inside the bin for some reason. So it's really, really tough, but it seems like the current theory is that he did indeed fall asleep either on or in this bin. The truck came and picked him up, and apparently these trucks do have crushers built into them. As they're picking up their loads, there's a hydraulic press that basically squeezes everything together. I really don't know, but some other developments that happened. So police decided that they were going to search this dump. A few weeks after that, all of a sudden they arrested somebody, an employee that worked there. And from what I understand, that employee was a person that was almost like a traffic manager that kind of helped manage the routes for pickups. And they had arrested him under perversion of justice. I think here in the States we call it obstruction of justice. And basically just when he made bail, they then announced that they weren't going to press charges any further with him. But around all that, the information came out that the truck had originally stated it was carrying only 11 kilograms, about 24 pounds. And the truth was that it was carrying more like 100 kilograms, which is over 220 pounds, I believe. So that was part of the reason why the police didn't initially go and investigate that, why they didn't chase that lead down, despite the fact, and I still find this mind-boggling, that it seems like a common sense approach to me that if you have the guy's cell phone that is following that path, go to where that path leads and look. I don't understand. I really don't understand why it took all of this to come out before this search is being conducted, but it is now being conducted. So let's jump into some news stories about what's going on with it. So now police are openly saying that they are confident his body will be found at a landfill site. Apparently they even called his mother and basically told her just to kind of prepare for the worst here, that they're fairly certain he's there. Here we see some images of them going through the garbage, and like I mentioned, this doesn't look like it's recycled goods. This is straight up garbage that they're going through at this landfill. In reference to the weight difference, they're saying to have that information really reinforced the decision that we had already made that we needed to come and search this landfill site. So they were already going to search the site. That once again just makes me just a tiny bit suspicious about this information all of a sudden coming out after this guy's arrest. Now, I mentioned it. They're saying that they're not pressing charges. They don't think that he did anything criminal necessarily. They do think this was just a goof. But why wasn't that goof double checked when the basic logic of what was happening there was, if nothing else, his cell phone was traveling in that bin lorry, in that truck to this landfill? If nothing else, why wouldn't they try to recover that as a potential piece of evidence of what happened to him? I guess they could lean on the excuse of, well, we don't know if there was any foul play at the time, so why are we going to go get this guy's cell phone? But if you do consider that, a cell phone is a somewhat expensive item, a very important personal item to most of us, why wouldn't you consider that there was some foul play if he was separated from his cell phone? What if the cell phone had fingerprints or some type of DNA or some type of information of the person that had done something to him? It baffles me that they didn't chase that lead down earlier. And because of that, they're now having to go through between 60 to 80 tons of garbage. Yes, tons. After he was reported missing, signals showed his mobile phone had been in nearby Barton Mills and matched the route of a bin lorry. Police were initially told the waste collected from the area weighed 11 kilograms, too light to have contained Mr. McKeague. The force has since found out the lorry's load was more like 100 kilograms. Asked if Mr. McKeague's family had wanted police to come search the site sooner, Department Superintendent Elliott replied, quote, "We had discussions with the family around coming to search the landfill site at the beginning of the investigation when we understood Corrie's phone was tracked at a similar pace to the waste lorry. However, the information at that point did not lead us to believe that it was justifiable to come and search here. The strongest line of inquiry at the time was that Corrie had tried to walk home." I'm really struggling with that whole mindset. Why would you have thought that he was trying to walk home? And once again, if he did try to walk home and he didn't get there, can't we assume that foul play had intervened in some way? The logic going on here is like truly baffling me. Now, as opposed to the earlier case where I think potentially you might have some police trying to cover each other's backs here, and maybe even a judge. Maybe there could be some very bad things going on in Heidi's case. With this case, it feels like people just weren't thinking logically, and I just don't get it. It is so basic. You're relying on technology in one way by saying, hey, we're watching his pings, it's matching this bin lorry that's going back to the landfill. But then you have other technology that says, well, they weigh it when they get there, and there's no way that there could have been a body in there. Well, which one of those is going to be more accurate? For me personally, I would say it's probably easier for a weight to be broken than for multiple cell phone towers along a route that are picking up his device pinging. It's just, you have several devices confirming information versus one potential failure of a device, which would be this scale that is either built into the truck or at the location when the truck gets back. And around all that, you have a very heartbroken mother who is now apologizing for upsetting her supporters. Here's a quote from her. "I'm so upset that I've brought over 120,000 people into this with us. I'm making other people upset because I needed their support when maybe this didn't have to happen." Now, I watched her Facebook video posts about this case. I saw all the work she was trying to do. I saw her struggle with people saying things that she didn't necessarily agree with or want to hear. But I have to say, from the bottom of my heart, she shouldn't be apologizing to anybody. People should be apologizing to her. And I think those people are called officer. Why they didn't search that landfill from the get-go makes little sense. Why they didn't figure out that that scale was busted and those weight measurements were incorrect much earlier. I mean, this is 6 months. What does it take to verify that data? What would it have taken for someone to just say, you know what, let's take the same truck, which at some point they were at least looking at this truck. We know that they had checked it for blood. Let's take this truck. Let's go pick up a load. Let's see how that whole thing works. Let's weigh the load ourselves before you pick it up. And then let's see what weight is noticed. I mean, it is not hard. It wouldn't take more than a day. It would not take more than a day to verify if that was working properly or not. But it takes 6 months to figure it out. And because of that 6 months, you have all this extra garbage. And outside of that, you have, if poor Corrie's body is there, it is going to be horribly distressed. They're probably not going to be able to tell what the hell happened if anything did happen to him. And once again, everyone can rule out foul play. They're just going to fall back to the easiest common position. Oh, this guy just fell asleep. Who knows? What if he was struck in the head by someone? What if something really bad happened to him and he was placed? And think about this. This is a kid wearing nice clothes. He was out partying that night. He fell asleep in a doorway at one spot. That's not a particularly dirty place. He's going to go crawl into a trash bin? Just the logic of it, it seems to be that it is much easier to believe, for me, if we're once again riding on just simple basic logic here, that something happened to this kid before he was put into the trash can, if he was truly put into a dirty trash can, like this story is kind of leading us to believe. I'm sorry, guys, I know I'm fired up on this, but this case just really, really rattles me. And for them to be back at the spot that all of us were saying they should have been checking in the first place, absolutely mind-blowing. I just hope they find him soon. I hope his family gets to start their grieving process soon. And I hope that some form of answer might come out of their discovery of him. But I'm really not certain that that's going to be the case. Outside of that, it looks like this process can take still up to another 6 to 8 weeks for them to process all of that garbage. They're having to do some other things, like they brought a hawk in to try to keep birds away from the rubbish because they're opening all this up. They're worried about disturbing the neighbors because of the smell that they're kicking up with unearthing all of this. There's a lot of ramifications going on for what seems like could have been pretty simple police work that would have totally minimized all this early on, but unfortunately it just didn't happen. Now, I don't think that there's anything suspicious going on here. I just think that people were looking at this case in a bit of a lazy way. I don't have any other way to say it. They just didn't want to do a few simple steps that would have headed off a ton of work, literally 60 to 80 tons of work that has to be done now. And this is where we're ending this video, but as you can see, my final update is about Jim Sullivan. I promise you guys, you don't want to miss it. Please jump over to the next video to see what we are figuring out on that case. And thank you so much for joining me here on BrainScratch. I appreciate each and every one of you out there. I hope you have a nice Friday, have a great weekend, and I'll see you back here next week on the Lord and Arts channel.